Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center. And on behalf of the Ohio chapter of APWA, the Central Ohio chapter, I should say, in the LTAP Center, we'd like to welcome you to our first virtual Lunch and Learn. And it's going to be on public works responses to the COVID-19 situation. We appreciate everyone who's joined us. I'm going to do a couple housekeeping items, then I'll turn it over to our moderator for the day. Housekeeping wise, on your GoToWebinar panel, there is a question box. And we would ask that you put any questions you have for our presenters in that box, and they're going to be distributed out to the presenters by our moderator. So we can hopefully get you some answers to those questions. We do have quite a few presenters today. We're going to be moving through the material, and then we'll open things up to respond to the questions. Also, we have the hands up feature in the GoToWebinar, but we're not really going to be using that today. So if you happen to click it, I'll probably put your hand back down for you. So just be aware that we're not using the hands up feature. We are also attempting to record the webinar. If that is successful, we'll definitely get a link out to everyone afterwards. I believe that's all I have, Brian. Are you ready?
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. So I'm Brian Moore, the president of the Central Ohio chapter of APWA. And with our stay-at-home order that's going on now, many communities in Ohio have changed the way they really gotta operate here. So we thought it'd be good for our members that would be interested in hearing this to put on this webinar and to hear about how these Central Ohio communities are dealing with this change. And actually, I chatted with the group yesterday. It was a really cool conversation, and some of the group that you're going to hear from today is even talking about maybe some of the positives that are going to come out of this on the backside. So feel free to put your questions in the question box, and we'll let our presenters all go through, and then we'll answer all the questions at the end. So let me introduce our first guest. It's Jackie Thiel, the Public Service Director and City Engineer for the City of Upper Arlington. So Jackie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Can everyone see my screen? I assume so.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I just want to make sure before I get started. So, yeah, I just wanted to quickly go over our response plan. And since I'm the first one starting out, I figured I would start with how this all began. So on March 10th is when it really hit home for me. Obviously, we had been having cases in Ohio before March 10th, but that's when I really saw it affect the workplace. I had some meetings planned for that day, and I had some of my employees come to me and say, I'm not sitting in that meeting room. And I thought, well, what do you mean you're not sitting in that meeting room? And things quickly escalated from there. You can see on my slide here, the Stop the Spread of Germs flyers started going up everywhere as our first reaction. I know that we probably put up 20 flyers just in our building alone. And then we also had policies start coming out about contagious disease from the city and how we were going to keep our employees safe. By March 13th, we had just in 3 days, we had been talking about plans of how to keep people safe. And then 3 days later, we quickly went to, all right, looks like we're going to working from home except for these essential operations, which Public Works obviously falls into. So on March 17th, we began a work schedule that you can see on the left-hand side. And what we were doing is we were trying to split employees into 2 groups, but still working all together every day. So we started with a staggered start time. What we found initially is, we all come in at the beginning of our day, and we're all in our Public Works break room, gathered, waiting for our tasks for the day, and we had too many people. So to deal with that, we went to a staggered start. 7 a.m. to 3 was the first group, and 7:30 to 3:30 was the second group. And we had everyone working through lunch. That's another thing that we quickly saw, is that everyone would come in for lunch together. And obviously we can't social distance in one room and be eating at the same time. One thing that we did learn from that stagger time was too short. So if anyone's looking at doing staggering, I'd recommend that giving yourself an hour. And in that time, we were developing our essential operations plan. And I remember on March 17th telling Public Works staff, we're getting this plan in place, but who knows if we'll even have to go to it. Just 2 days later, we pulled the trigger and went to our essential operations plan. So obviously our goal was to reduce the number of employees in one location and really extend that social distancing, but also what was going to be our plan if someone became infected. We didn't want to knock out our entire workforce. And so we went very cautious and went to 3 shifts. You can see our beginning calendar there on the right. So we have our green team, our orange team, and our purple team. And what we were doing is, and what we're still doing, is 2 days on and then 4 days of paid administrative leave. We do have supervisors and others working from home on their paid administrative leave days so that we reduce some of that. So if you're working from home, if you fill 8 hours, great, you don't have paid administrative leave that day. If you only fill a couple hours, then you might have 6 hours of paid administrative leave. And what did our essential operations plan mean for us? So we have a public works section, street maintenance, utilities, sewers, and then we also have an electrical section that does our traffic signals and street lights and electrical work for our facilities. And then we have our own fleet section as well. So obviously we have to maintain traffic signals and emergency street light responses, for any safety issues, preventative maintenance that has to be addressed now. If we had a power outage, providing generator power to traffic signals and facilities is needed. Any building maintenance issues that are for safety, and then other repairs as schedule allows. But you can imagine with only 1 or 2 people in an electrical section shift, there's not much else that they can get done. For public works and fleet, we obviously responding to sanitary sewer backups, and unfortunately we all had to deal with the flooding on March 30th, so that was definitely a challenge. We're doing potholing, any down signs we're obviously addressing, and for fleet, their top priority is keeping police and fire operating, and then keeping our essential vehicles for other operations going as well. We're still getting calls for animals in the road, doing catch basin repairs, hydrant damage, street debris, and we've had some wind, nothing that's caused too many problems, but we all know that could happen at any moment. And then fleets repairing public works vehicles too. I know we're focusing on public works, but just to touch, I think we've all realized that in Central Ohio, construction has kind of kept business as usual. So on our engineering staff, they are working from home when they can, but for construction inspection, we've had to keep that going. So what we're doing with that staff is asking them to come into the parking lot, get into their city vehicle from the parking lot, go to their construction site, and then at the end of the day, coming back in, parking their vehicle and going directly home. So we're trying to limit the number of people that come into our building to reduce the amount of contact. So just looking at how are we going to move forward, obviously we can't maintain this amount of paid administrative leave for a long period. It's already longer than we anticipated. And I think that what we're all seeing is that it's not like May 1st, things are going to magically open back up, or June 1st for that matter. So we're really focusing on taking steps to come out of this slower than how we came into it with our 2-day approach. So we're looking at 2 options right now for May. And what we're probably going to go to is a 2-shift operation, so that still leaves us with a healthy crew if someone were to contract COVID-19, and we had to quarantine a shift. But we're looking at 3 days on and then 3 days off with paid admin leave, but moving to 10-hour days. So that also would reduce the amount of paid admin leave we'd have. So people would be averaging 30 hours, closer to 30 hours a week versus the 16 we're at right now. And then with that, it does bring enough people to our facility that we would have to do a staggered start. So of the 2 shifts, within those shifts, there would also be a staggered start. So probably looking to start one shift at 7 and then the other at 8, and maintaining working through lunch so that we don't have everyone gathering. So with that, I'll turn it over back to Brian.
All right, thanks, Jackie. That was very, very informative there. So our next guest is Cindy Fitzpatrick. She's the Public Service Director for Grove City. So let me turn it over to Cindy.
Hi guys, if you can just give me a second to get my screens up, and I will hopefully. All right, you guys see my PowerPoint in the full screen mode?
Yeah, we can see it. Thanks.
Okay, great. So in Grove City, we have had many of the same challenges that Jackie described. We were a little slower to implement our essential employee response and change in operations, but it was just the week after. I think that once the official stay-at-home order was issued, we had been planning the week before, so we were able to jump right in. In Grove City, we have a really strong emergency operations program, and so we established our incident command structure and set objectives as a local government of what our primary focus needed to be. I have those listed there. So we were looking to protect our workforce by reducing risk and limiting exposure, while at the same time providing the essential government functions of public safety and service to the city, maintaining our service and response capability. We wanted to utilize the incident command structure and 214 documentation to track any actions or decisions that we're making. And then we wanted to make sure that we were a resource for our residents and businesses, so providing information to them as much as we possibly could. Some of the very first initial response that we did was cancel or suspend events, programs, and activities, and closed our city facilities to the public. And we instituted daily briefings. Initially, this was just city administration and council, senior staff, and then we quickly added to it so that we had situational awareness of our local partners. So we include the township fire departments that surround us, the Village of Urban Crest, the school district, the Chamber of Commerce, and some key community groups and businesses. We have a town center group, as well as we invite Mount Carmel and Ohio Health with our partnerships with them in our community to these meetings. And those have been really helpful and a lot of input from our partners. So every day in that meeting, we go over the city's incident action plan. One of these is prepared every day. And I was going to bring that document up and share with you guys. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. These are the objectives that are on the standard 202 form that I just talked about. We've added and subtracted from this as we've gone along. So something that actually just came on to our objectives today was looking at long-term recovery planning for the delivery of services and programs, and how we're going to slowly open back up. Like Jackie mentioned, we're not going to go in this kind of shutdown mode as quickly when we open up. This next form is just our organizational structure and contact information for the key folks in the ICS command structure. An important plan for us was our medical plan. We wanted to make sure that all of our staff were aware of what they should do if they came in contact with somebody who was suspected or a confirmed case of COVID-19, what their next steps would be, or if they started becoming symptomatic, what they should do. So we created some flow charts that just tell them step by step exactly what they should do and how to respond. So this first flow chart was, I apologize for the scrolling, is if you came in contact with a suspected case. And then the next flow chart was if you become symptomatic, how you're supposed to handle it, so that we can ensure that our staff is safe and that we don't expose anyone else that's still reporting for work. We'll scroll a little more here. We also established testing procedures with Ohio State, Mount Carmel, Grove City, and Ohio Health. So if any of our first responders or essential employees start becoming symptomatic, we have a means to get them tested. And fortunately, with Mount Carmel and Ohio Health right here in Grove City, they're able to turn around test results in 4 to 6 hours. Even more fortunately, we haven't had to use this yet. So we have had some folks who have been in close contact of a confirmed case, and they're just instructed to quarantine for 14 days and then return to work. And all of those have actually been able to return to work this week, but we've not had anyone on city staff become symptomatic and need testing for themselves yet. But if that happens, or when that happens, because it's likely, I think that we're ready. So these are just the testing procedures. I'm going to scroll through this quickly and then share with you what each department is doing, and that's all documented on a form called the 214. Here, let me go to the page versus scrolling for you. That might be a little better. So this is just a form of any activity related to our COVID-19 response that every department head is submitting every day. Just so you can see what that looks like. But I'll go into a little more of exactly what Public Works is doing. And like Jackie, I listed here what we're responsible for. So our street maintenance department handles anything street maintenance related, as well as sewer and electric, park maintenance, urban forestry, fleet maintenance, and facility maintenance are all under our purview. And so essential functions, of course, when the stay-at-home order first came out and it was 2 weeks and we didn't really know what this was going to look like in the long term, we took some initial response of closing our facilities, and we moved all of our administrative staff to working from home. Our IS department was exceptional in that, getting them outfitted with laptops and forwarding phones and voicemails and all that kind of stuff. We started doing temperature checks at the beginning of each shift for everyone, and changed some of our city facility cleaning operations to focus on disinfecting occupied facilities. So when we closed some facilities to the public, we realized that there were some facilities that weren't going to be occupied anymore, and so we scaled way back on the cleaning activities there and tried to put all of our forces and efforts on disinfecting the occupied spaces. We also joined the shared services agreement with some local governments in Ohio. I think Dan's going to share a little more on that later. So that was kind of the initial 2 weeks, what we were doing. We set up our staffs in an every other day work, and the days they were off, they were paid administrative leave, but working from home. My staff is pretty lean here, and to maintain essential functions, only having half staff all week long wasn't realistic for us. And so after the first 2 weeks, we regrouped and decided to change our field operations to 2 shifts. Half of my staff working from 6:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., so working through lunch to try to minimize any congregating, talking about which facilities or which physical buildings that people reported to maintain no more than 6 people in a building at a time. And then the second shift reports at 3 to 11. And although there's only a half hour between those, we haven't seen any problems with that. But I think where it's different is because it's not a staggered start. I think by 2:30, those folks are ready to hit the door and get out of here quickly and aren't lingering. And the second shift is not reporting any earlier than they need to. They're getting here right at 3 and then heading out for their work day. So the half-hour split shifts has worked well for us. And then those folks are alternating every other week. So your week on days and then a week on evenings. And we know that right now the stay-at-home order is through May 1st, but we anticipate that this is going to last longer. So we're trying to get better at communication across shifts when we have bigger projects that normally we would throw a lot of staff at, how to exchange that information and materials and what progress has been made so that the next shift coming in can take over and finish projects. Additionally, we are, disinfecting common areas and the vehicles at the beginning and end of each shift. We have assigned vehicles, one person per vehicle, and then it's in our responsibilities to monitor and distribute supplies to citywide employees. So those come in through our incident command structure, those requests, and then as logistics section chief, we make sure that we provide that, and then working to procure and inventory and monitor the PPE that we utilize for our staff. That's kind of the public works focus. I just thought I would hit on a couple more things as a local government, things that we're doing. Obviously, extensive public messaging. So that's just kind of a screenshot of our city website, how we're trying to reach our community as well as our businesses. We've gone to virtual council meetings and other public meetings. Our building division has even gone to virtual inspections. Just they have the homeowner FaceTime and show them what they need to look at versus going into people's homes for important inspections that are still happening. The city has provided expanded health benefits with telemedicine and some of the other EAP stuff. And then we did establish an essential employees for COVID-19 executive order, just to outline it. We are looking at modeling the financial impacts that COVID-19 is going to have. We obviously know that with unemployment as high as it is right now, that's going to have impacts on our income tax revenue, which is 81% of the revenue for the city of Grove City. So that's going to be extensive on what that means for us. So we implemented a hiring freeze, and we're looking to defer expenditures and capital projects. And each department was asked to look at their budgets and try to propose a 20% reduction. We also established a call center, and they are focusing on seniors. So it's a resource, pairing people with community resources as they call in, but also doing outbound wellness checks on our seniors. We are doing business outreach and assistance to the SBA loan process and trying to, especially our small businesses, keep them afloat. And then right now, some of our new focuses and tasks are evaluating additional employee medical screening just to try to limit exposure, and then starting the long-term recovery planning, looking at what we have gained in some efficiencies, what things that we've changed operations and are working actually better and that we want to keep for the long term. And then how we slowly come out of this and get everyone back to work and start welcoming the public back into our facilities and operations. That's all I have. I think, Brian, I'll turn it back over to you. We'll do questions at the end.
All right, very good, Cindy. Yeah, just as a reminder, we've got a question box there in the control panel. Feel free to ask your questions there, and we'll have our panelists answer those at the end. So our next guest is Mr. Larry Lester. He's the Deputy Director of Public Service for the City of Hilliard.
Thank you, Brian. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it opening there.
Great, thank you. Last week, I saw a graphic on LinkedIn, and it was a character, and his hair was all messed up in the morning. And the phrase with this graphic was something along the lines of, "I'm getting ready for the day's orders." So I think, I can speak for our organization. I think we're beyond that situation or feeling, and we're really looking at, okay, what change lies ahead and what can we do as an organization to prepare for that change. I want to first talk about some of the temporary policy changes that have happened in Hilliard, and these are citywide changes. Originally, when the COVID-19 pandemic began, we went through and started to identify essential staff and the appropriate staffing levels, and that was done at the department level. Our city manager issued orders early on. She provided 80 hours of sick leave for COVID-19 purposes, and also childcare was discussed. We ultimately developed an advanced leave program for childcare, and then looked at a work from home, temporary work from home policy. The city had a work from home policy prior to COVID-19, and that was done at the department level. Each director would have the opportunity to authorize work from home for certain positions or certain functions on a per case basis. And so we've opened that policy up during this time, and we put a group of employees in a work from home status, and then we also have another group that is basically on a standby or available for call-in status. We did not close city buildings early on. We made that change several weeks into the process. We decided to close city buildings and some facilities. We first limited access and then went to a full closure. And right now we're really in the process of tracking our expenditures related to COVID. Cindy mentioned some of the ICS forms. We've worked through those on a weekly basis. We've downloaded the new FEMA forms to take a look at those and begin to capture all of our costs related to COVID. And then we're currently reviewing budgets and proposing reductions, first on the capital side, and then second on the operating, and running those 10, 15, 20% budget reduction scenarios. Operations changes related to public works. We closed our Hilliard Service Center before the city manager issued her order to close city buildings. We did that early on, and that was very easy for us to do. Our facility is within a fence line, and we do have an automatic gate. So we made that change early on. We had deliveries delivered outside of our gate. We restricted access to contractors, vendors, and the general public. Our centralized call center and mobile 311 system was relocated early on. Our representative was identified as a work-at-home employee, and she moved our call center from her isolated office to her kitchen table. So she is running our call center from home, and that has certainly been challenging for her. She's a student and a mother, but she's making it work. Early on, we decided not to go into a rotating schedule. Our first effort was to divide our employees into 3 subgroups and put those work units or subgroups in 3 different buildings. And we operated like that for a couple weeks. And then ultimately, when the first stay-at-home order came, we realized that we have to make a change. And prior to that, we had surveyed other communities within the region and have found various different schedule scenarios, from 2-day rotating schedules to 3-day rotating schedules, and then 2-week rotating schedules. And Cindy mentioned in our discussion yesterday about the AM, PM, or first and second shift schedule, which was a new concept. So we're looking at all these various scheduling scenarios, and my recommendation is to consider all options and go with what works best for your organization. We ultimately went from the 3 subgroups in 3 separate buildings to the 2-week rotation, and we held that 3 subgroup separation within our unit. We have 32 members in our team, and we cut that group to 24 essential, and we originally operated with 8 per building, and then when we cut that in half and went to the 2-week rotating, we have 4 in each building, and that has worked out very well for us. We had to do a makeshift lunch area in one building, and we've advised staff to stay in their respective buildings. We also have assigned city vehicles and equipment, and the equipment is disinfected each morning and at the end of each shift, or if there's a vehicle change, we require employees to request use of a vehicle that's not assigned to them through the crew leader, and then that vehicle is disinfected before they go out and when they come back into the shop. We are disinfecting our buildings 3 times per day at least. We are using a product that was designed for the airline industry as a bleach substitute, and we're spraying all city buildings at least 3 times a day. Some high traffic buildings are upwards of 5 times a day. And then we're requiring employees to self-monitor for any COVID-19 symptoms. Our communications team has really taken a different role through this COVID-19 pandemic. Our city manager has provided weekly updates to employees. Those are usually done on Fridays, and it's usually starts with any change in orders for that week or the upcoming week. And then she also provides opportunities for learning. And then she'll provide a section that's sort of motivational or uplifting to help employees cope with this time. Our insurance provider has enhanced benefits for employees, and I would be happy to have that discussion after the presentation if your organizations are seeing that through your provider. And we've also promoted our EAP program to employees, and then we have sent employees additional mental health information beyond what is provided through the EAP. We're using this time really to promote training and professional development. Our city manager and communications director work collectively with all the directors and developed Hilliard University. And it is a professional development opportunity. It's a points-based program. It's 500 points, and you get so many points for each activity. An activity may be a book read. It might be a almost like a mini case study review with a 100 or 200 word written summary. It could be an online webinar. We also have allowed self-design programs for those that may be doing college courses or training outside of that identified within Hilliard University. And at the end of the 500 points, employees will receive a certificate as well as a t-shirt promoting and recognizing their efforts in Hilliard University. And as part of that, we've also developed a leadership book review and discussion club. That's been interesting. I've seen employees in our organization who are reading leadership books for the first time in their career, and that's been very exciting to see. So we've used this time to look at the positive takeaways, and I communicate to our employees daily that, you know, we're all in a situation that none of us really want to be in, and that affects our work life, our home life, our personal life, and so we have to look at what are the positive takeaways, or what can we learn from this situation that we can carry into the future, because we're living history. We want to improve communication and employee engagement, and I'm already seeing that within the last 30 days or more. We're seeing that change, and ultimately build more meaningful working relationships. I have 3 team members assigned to my building, and these are individuals who work on a separate crew that I don't see normally on a day-to-day basis. And I have connected with them and talked about things outside of work with their families, and, you know, things that they want to share, and we've had discussions, and I've noticed leadership traits in one individual that's been very fun to watch him operate in this type of situation. We want to ultimately develop our organizational culture, build our capacity. We want to lean on and increase the use of technology. 5 years ago, the operations supervisor and I looked at our department and how we can prepare for the future, and we identified a lack of technology, or a lack of use of technology, and the desire to move toward a paperless, more efficient operation. When we put those put that focus in place, we had no idea that we were preparing for something to this magnitude that would happen 5 years later. So when everything happened, we basically picked up our Surfaces and our iPads, and we're carrying on as if it's normal business. And so that's been fun to see our preparation really come to fruition. And we want to improve our time management skills. And again, we're increasing our focus as a department and as a city on professional development. And the ultimate goal really is to identify ways that we can get better and create greater public value for the citizens entrusted to our care. And the last slide I want to close with, through all this, people matter and their contributions matter. I saw this image yesterday when I was looking. I'm a proponent of servant leadership. Certainly we're in the middle of a crisis pandemic that requires, you know, crisis management and emergency management. And I think there's definitely a need to shift your leadership style or management style to a command and control or authoritative leadership style at times when appropriate, but certainly servant leadership wins every time. And we are at a time right now where servant leadership is important. And the word empathetic comes to mind for me. I'm working at home this week, and my desk at work, I have, dual monitors, and everything is set up exactly the way I like it. And I can walk in every day, turn on, and everything just happens. So I've gone from that to working at a 40-inch wide desk with a hutch in my bedroom. And the second day in, I complained to my wife about, my work environment here at home. And I thought about our call center representative who is trying to run our call center from a Microsoft Surface laptop at her kitchen table while she's doing 2 college classes and being a mother. So I needed to really understand her situation, and it brought light to my situation. So at the end of this rope is an anchor. I think it's important for us to look toward the anchors in our department, and those are the folks with leadership ability. I mentioned a gentleman earlier who I've watched step up, and Ed is a unique individual. He works out every day. He's in tremendous shape. He is free spirited. He jokes, but I've watched him change during this process, and he has stepped up and become a leader. And I really look at Ed like I look at the point guard on our basketball team this past season. I coached a 6th grade basketball team, and the first night of practice, I realized quickly that we did not have a point guard. And there was a girl who signed up to our team late, and she was a 3rd grader, so she was playing up 3 grades or a league. And she walked in the first night. She was the smallest kid in the league, but arguably the most athletic. But what really struck me about her was her strategic thinking and her leadership ability and the humility that she had on the court. And I saw her at other functions at school in plays and after school activities and how she interacted with others. And so I noticed leadership ability in her right away, and I saw those same characteristics months later in Ed in our department, and that's been fun to watch. Our conversations as a department have changed. Our operations supervisor has been great. In the past, he would generally call with problems, or I'm having a budget crisis, or I'm having this issue with a sewer out in the field. And now his conversations start with, how are you doing? What can I help you with? And then here's what I need help with. So our conversations have changed, and I certainly appreciate our staff, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to present today, and thank you for your time. I want to turn it back over to Brian.
All right, thanks, Larry. That was a really cool perspective there on things. Our next guest is Dan Whited. He's the Director of Service and Engineering for the City of Worthington. So Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Brian. Trying to get my screen up and running here. There we go. That was good stuff, Larry, and I think that's really a excellent point that in this instance you really see people shine, and it's really cool to watch that happen. I want to take a little bit of a different route today. I'm going to.
Dan, I don't know if you're sharing your screen, but I'm not seeing it.
Showing? Sorry. What was showing? Here. You seeing it now?
Yeah, we can see it. Thanks.
Okay, let's start back at the beginning. So as I was saying, I want to go a little bit different route today. I know you've heard from Larry and Cindy and Jackie about what they've done with their staff and their operations. Ours have been very similar. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll talk some about some regional collaboration we've developed as a result of this pandemic, and talk about communication and within to our public and to our incident command center. That'll be the big focus of what I'm going to look at today, and I'll talk a little bit about what we'll do moving forward. Our staff is about 23 people. We're organized, myself, and we have 3 main sections: engineering, GIS, service, and fleet, and I'll focus on that. The service section itself is divided into 4 different sections as well. And what those sections are doing are operating primarily on an as-needed basis. They're responding to those emergency situations we have. As Jackie mentioned, we had a couple storms over the past few weeks, and we had to clear some trees. You can see one over there that fell into the right of way. We cleared that, and several other ones. We've had some issues with our street lights, and we've been really good about communicating with signage to our community and keeping our construction projects running. We have a ditch maintenance project that's going on right now. We have a water line project and several other that we're keeping running, but we're doing the inspection basically virtually. We'll have the contractor will send us pictures, and so we'll do some occasional site visits, but we're doing a lot of that virtually, and it's actually working out really well. Our fleet division's operating with 1 staff in the garage so that they're social distancing from the rest of our mechanics. And that 1 individual is keeping up primarily with maintenance of the equipment required for emergency responses. Ironically, we seem to have had a lot of issues with fire EMS vehicles during that period of time, and they've spent most of their time with that. We're deferring any preventive maintenance and those common everyday things for the time being. In our management, the engineering and GIS section, are myself, our superintendent, our office administrator, and the assistant director are working from home primarily, and actually being very productive. We use MS Teams regularly, probably on call 4 to 5 times a day with that. But we're pushing forward our CIP projects, either making sure that they're moving forward in design, or that we're working on the ongoing construction. Also, of course, focusing on those regulatory things we need to do and making sure our refuse collection and other operations are going solid. And we're doing all that very similarly to what the other communities are doing. Our staff we're responsible for facilities, as you saw in that previous diagram. And our staff is taking care of cleaning in the fire, EMS, and city hall buildings that aren't completely closed, or buildings that we have staff in. And we go in 3 times a day, 5 a.m., 1 p.m., and 8:30, and do an in-depth cleaning on any facilities, any portions of those facilities that have been used and may be not contaminated, but just need some cleaning and disinfecting. If we do run across a potential of somebody having been suspected of being exposed to COVID, we will call in a professional cleaning company to decontaminate those areas. We no longer have our staff trying to do that type of work. So moving a little bit more outwardly focused, as we went into this back around March 13th, we realized that this could be a really big hit to any one of our cities if a majority of our staff, if one of our staff came down with COVID and we weren't practicing social distancing appropriately, and we ended up having a large-scale outbreak similar to what happened to that pork plant. So in order to just kind of have each other's back, these communities here have developed an agreement, very informal agreement, that if you need us, we're there for you, and vice versa. For example, if we should have an outbreak in Worthington, we know that we can call Dublin Finley, the Franklin County engineer, and they'll help us make sure that we're taking care of those essential priorities so that we can have a level of comfort as we move forward. As I mentioned, it's informal right now. There's a lesson learned here that instead of trying to scurry around and make this happen as a result of an emergency, we'll probably set up something more formal going forward. But I appreciate all of those folks jumping in to do that. What I really want to focus on today, as I mentioned, is something that we've done with our GIS group. We have a pretty robust GIS and a fantastic engineering GIS manager and GIS analyst, that when this first started, they came to me and said, hey, we can do some stuff with our with our GIS to provide some data to the incident command and to the public that you may want to use. So using a combination of publicly available features from different services, including the Census Bureau, Department of Health, and Columbus Board of Health, we used this information to create dashboards to communicate our ongoing situations to residents and provide important information to our incident command that they will use to continue to operate on a day-to-day basis to do their job. So first I'll go over our public-facing dashboards real quickly. There's a lot of information here and happy to share it offline if you are interested in some more stuff. But the first portion I'll show you here is our community characteristics report. This is based primarily on census data, and it gives us an understanding of the vulnerable population in the city of Worthington that may be disproportionately affected. You can see Worthington has a reputation of having an older community. We have a population of just under 15,000, and a large portion of those are over 65. And we have several of them living in facilities where they're grouped together, care facilities. We have 261 living in group quarters, and 138 of those are over 65. So we want to be careful that we're monitoring them as well. And this is actually an interactive site, so you can click on some of these blocks and see additional information. This over here shows information on the different census areas of all the demographics you see here, breakdown of our vulnerability of our age and the vulnerability index in those same areas. There's a high level of detail here. I won't go over all of it, but we continued with some stuff focused toward not just our individual population, but also our businesses. So we have a daytime population per square mile that's significantly larger than our normal population. There's 16,000 employees added, many of those added to our normal 15,000 population. We have a solid understanding of population that doesn't have insurance, how many are in the poverty level, the language barriers we might face with our emergency operations and reaching out to people, all these different things that help us understand our community. And we provide this information, use it ourselves, but also provide it to our community so that they can be aware. We also have a dashboard that indicates what sorts of businesses are being provided to residents. As an example, our resource pantry in Cohatch is doing at least 20 grocery deliveries to people in need every week. Our community partners are being well communicated with through the liaison section of our incident command center. And we're keeping open the Worthington Farmers Market, very interestingly, with a on-call. They'll call in, make their orders. We set up a diagram and a outline for getting through the community center parking lot to pick up your orders. Everybody's wearing a PPE and pass off the orders, and they go on their merry way. And the city schools are serving over 3,000 meals per week to students in need. And again, this information is updated on a regular basis. Now, the other part of this, less public-facing information that we use as part of the incident command, so we can have a firm understanding of what's happening, well, honestly, globally, nationally, statewide, and then zero down into our own community. Cindy had gone over what an incident command system is. Just in case you aren't fully aware, it's a management system that's developed by an agency to oversee these communities during urgent conditions, and it's split up into several categories for a command. Ours is in command by our city manager, our police chief, and our fire chief. And then we have operations, planning, logistics, etc., as other sections of that system, and that allows them to identify, act, and communicate. I blocked that out there, but key issues that need to be addressed on an efficient and effective manner. They have a hub site that they use to manage their information. This shows the information you see right here. This was an older, you don't see, we had a recent proclamation of state of emergency that was forwarded here just this week. So that's been extended. And Ohio, I think, has done one as well. This information allows incident command, like I said, to be able to be aware of what's going on and share that information internally and externally. The information is collected from the Ohio Department of Health for Ohio and Franklin County, and we work with the Columbus Board of Health. Unlike our peers who work with Franklin Board of Health, we're actually in the Columbus Board of Health with the city of Columbus. So when you see some of these news stories or the information that's reported, we're lumped in with Columbus in those statistics. Our values are updated automatically from Ohio Department of Health, and the Columbus Board of Health shares their numbers with us on a regular basis. And this is the kind of information you see here. We're able to track all of the Ohio cases, and then over here we'll track the Columbus and Franklin County and Worthington cases. And then we do an employee status tracking. This was pretty unusual. Typically, ICS will use school data, school attendance rates, in order to track pandemics like this or other emergency issues, but schools not being in session, obviously you can't do that. So Captain Craig with our fire department, who is actually a infectious disease specialist, well recognized in that area, thought that maybe we could do that by analyzing our own staff. So we monitor our staff to see what their attendance is, if there's any symptomatic cases or anybody that's for one reason been tested positive or been exposed. This gives us an indicate of the potential for community spread, the severity of the potential for community spread in our city. So here's this was actually as of today, I believe, or no, I'm sorry, earlier in the week. 77 people are actually working in staff. Those are in person. Those are largely our EMS folks. 43 working from home. That's ourselves, some of the other departments as well, the city management, parks and rec, et cetera. 7 employees that aren't working but are still getting their pay, as Larry described in his presentation. And we have 3 on COVID leave. Not they don't have COVID, but they were potentially suspected to be exposed, so we put them on leave itself. You can see the graph over here. This first graph is low simply because we didn't get the data reported, so that probably shouldn't be on here. But you can see the charting of our employees working overtime. So we've had a pretty consistent level of staff continuing to work, and about 30% of our staff is working remotely. And then we have a department breakdown there as well. So that's what we're doing with our GIS. I wanted to show you that because I thought it was pretty unusual and pretty interesting information that is a different thing than some communities are doing, that just shows our ability and our willingness to work with data to report to the community and to our incident command. So aside from that, what are we going to do as we move into the new normal? As I think it was Jackie has mentioned, that they're looking at if we have a 20% drop in revenue, 15%, 5% over a period of time. We're looking at it from that perspective, but also taking a different type of look, which is referred to as the Moscow analysis. We're going through all of our operations and projects to identify what ones we must do, the vital operations that aren't negotiable, critical to sustaining essential functions, the regulatory functions like some projects we have to do under our sanitary sewer based on findings and orders through City of Columbus on the sewers, doing those projects that are legally mandated or contractually committed to. And of course, the many projects we already have underway that we've spent a significant sum of money on and we need to move forward with. And then we'll look at those should do's, those important operations and services that are expected from our community, and offer what they need to have done. Traditionally offered services that could be like street sweeping, other issues like that we should do and we'll hope to do as long as we aren't too badly hit by drop in funding. It's not just the income taxes that will be hurting. And by the way, the city of Worthington has a very high industrial and commercial component, so most of our taxes are based on businesses. And then there's also the other revenues like motor vehicle taxes. And then we'll look at those could do's. They're nice to do with available resources. If we come into more money than we thought we'd have, these would move on up the list, and we'd continue to do those. And then the won't do's, those ones that we just know we're not going to be able to do no matter what. So we've gone through or going through our capital improvement program, our operations, and all of our other cost centers to see how they sit in this type of category. Then in each one of these different cases, we'll prioritize and identify the cost savings or cost hits that we'll take on those as we go through and evaluate our future operations as we go into what will be called the new normal. I wanted to give you a link to these GIS information if you're interested in seeing it. If you do want to see this, you don't have to write them down. I'll send them to you. Just drop me a line. And then if you or your community is interested in trying to put together some of this information, you could sign up to the Ohio GIS Task Force Slack group. That's their website there, and they'll provide updated information for you on a regular basis, or you can use their some of their information to do your own thing. And templates are provided through other organizations as well. So that is really what I wanted to talk about today, other than kind of where Larry was going with staffing and seeing what people are able to do in a situation like this. And what you'll hear from Lewis and the others is that you'll really see that there are some things that you realize you could have done differently and better as a result of this sort of unanticipated situation. MS Teams has become our go-to for sharing information on a regular basis, and other technologies such as the GIS. I also want to recognize that our public works guys, they are first responders. They're just as important as our fire and police. We recognize that in the city of Worthington. We know we lean on them. We know they're out there in the thick of things without choice, providing those things that we all take for granted. You turn on your water tap or flush your toilet or drive on the roads and expect the traffic signals to be working. These are the guys that are out there making sure that happens every day. And I commend them for doing that, and acknowledge and recognize the American Public Works Association for allowing us to have groups like this put together to share what we're doing as peers in this industry. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. That's definitely a good point. That Public Works is definitely the first responders there as well. So our last guest we have today is Lewis McFarland. He's the general manager for the Earnhart Hill Regional Water and Sewer District. So I'll turn it over to Lewis.
Yeah, good afternoon. I would like to start by thanking APWA and LTAP for developing this lunch and learn idea, and the story Cindy, Jackie, Larry, and Dan are sharing with their experiences over the last few weeks. Our operation, although a government agency, is a little different than a traditional city or village. Earnhart Hill is a regional water and sewer district. We serve 10,000 people in rural Pickaway County. We operate 5 plants on a daily basis. Class 1 ion exchange water treatment plant, Class 1 iron and manganese removal plant. We've got Class 2 oxidation wastewater treatment plant and 2 Class 1 wastewater treatment plants. So quite a lot of assets out there. And on top of that, we have 300 miles of water and sewer pipe, 11 towers, 7 booster stations, and 10 sewer lift stations. We manage these activities with 22 people, so we're similar in size to Worthington. We have a 5-member governing board. Our employees are split up as follows. We've got 5 plant operators. We have 4 in our distribution and collection, 4 in engineering and GIS, 5 customer service folks, 2 in accounting. So every year, as required by the state, we work on our contingency plans, go through various scenarios, usually floods and fires and tornadoes. But we've never really covered any contingency such as a virus that we would have a long-term shutdown. However, the information that was put out early, I think by the government and news agencies, extremely helpful. We knew in early March that COVID-19 was highly contagious, no treatment available. And of course, the trigger for us was when the governor and the Columbus mayor canceled the Arnold Classic. We all work out of a 7,000 square foot office. And as with the cold and flu, if one of us got sick, we figured it would just be a matter of days and we would all have it. And so the goal of our contingency plan has to stay the same, and that is that we've got to keep water on. We have to keep our employees healthy. And so that would minimize the disruption to our customers. So by the second week of March, we had a plan in place, and by March 13th, that was our last day officially in the office working together as a team. So our plan basics was to focus on keeping people isolated and separated as much as possible. We were actually already set up to do this, as each of our field employees have tablets and are connected with our work order, our sampling, and our mapping systems. Each employee has a company vehicle and tools. 3 of our plants have remote monitoring, and 2 of those have remote process control. 3 years ago, we went one step further and we added cameras to our plants so we could actually keep an eye on the process along with the computer inputs and outputs that we perform. And of course, all of our booster station and sewer lift station sites are remotely monitored and controlled. So our basic separation of duties, each operator would take care of a plant, and one operator is manning the lab daily. So operators report directly from home to work. All of our compliance, sampling, and maintenance activities can be entered through a mobile device. The only piece missing is major maintenance activities, which require 2 or more people. And so we had to relax our plan on things like confined space, where we'd have to get 2 of our operators to work together temporarily to access some of our facilities that required confined space. Our weekly plant group meeting is now held in video conference, obviously, instead of in person. We took our water treatment plant coverage one step further in this plan. 3 of our operators have their own RVs, and they each volunteered for a 2-week isolation at our main water treatment plant. And we did this just to ensure that we would have at least one healthy operator on at all times. And we developed that early on in March, kind of thinking of the worst case scenario. We're probably going to go out of that rotation starting May 1 and just report from home directly. But I think that's kind of unique with the other plans that I've heard, is that we've actually had a couple of our folks there volunteer for that service. Our distribution group is focused on work orders that they can perform by themselves or with just one other person. And we've been able to tackle some things we normally put off, such as valve turning, replacing marker posts, maintenance of tracer wire hookups, all those type of things that you say, I'll get to it next winter or I'll get to it next summer. We're actually getting those things out right now. We're also looking for some leaks in some areas a little more intensely, leaks that don't rise to the top of a priority but need to be addressed, and we're zeroing in on those right now. One of the hurdles in this group is we only have one tablet to share between all 4, so our updates are only happening about once a week and not as instantaneous as our folks on the treatment side. Our engineering group hasn't missed a beat. Our GIS coordinator has a good internet service and is really cranking the from home. Our OOPS coordinator is working remotely as well. He's using his mobile device to update the OOPS system and pick up new locate requests. And our project engineer is observing our active sites and performing plan reviews from home. So really no issues at all with the engineering group. The customer service side, though, was our biggest challenge. Obviously, that's our interface with our customers, but we had to shut the office down. So we ended up, we've got 3 customers work kind of in our pickup window, our drive-through window area. And so there was just no way that they could work together. We've got 2 clerks that have good internet service from home. So they're able with our voice over internet to take our normal daily call load from home, and then they can dispatch our field crews, customer service field crews directly. And then we have one of our clerks without good internet service comes in and takes care of our night drop and post payments from there. So we've got 1 person in the front of the building. Our customer service field techs, they report individually from their home directly to customer calls. And luckily our meters and facilities are outside. So at this point in time, we have no reason to go inside of homes. I think the hurdle is going to be for a lot of utilities in the future is how do we get to those backflow prevention devices that are going to need inspected by plumbers. We're probably going to have 2 or 3 month pushback on inspection just because of the physical distancing. So Earnhart was in a good position, I think, to launch this plan. We had a governing board that was willing to allow us to make these drastic changes to our normal work pattern. And we had all of our employees 100% behind the plan. So nobody is sitting at home. Nobody's on a rotating shift. We are continuing with work as normal. We just don't report to the office in the morning. The technology was already in place. We're already using VPN connections for remote monitoring control facilities, so there really wasn't much of a learning curve. The voice over IP allowed for the portability of the phone system. Most of our employees have work-issued mobile devices and have had training to use them, so no curve on the device piece either. We've got vehicles for each field employee, which is key. I know a lot of communities probably don't have that luxury, but because we are a mobile group, everyone has a vehicle and it has tools. And has done a great job. We've had our first virtual meeting last week, and of course we prepared as much as we could ahead of time to avoid lengthy verbal summaries and that type of thing, and just focused our time on Q&A of statements. But it seemed to work well, and we're happy that it went smoothly. And of course, we're planning on several more of these virtual meetings. And of course, now the pressure's on to return to the status quo while keeping employees and public safe. And this is kind of weighing on me at this point in time is, what is that going to look like? May 1st is just around the corner, and we're going to have to handle keeping everybody safe. We talked previously about public bid openings. How do we handle things like that? I've got a couple of water main and service line replacement projects that I purposely put on hold because we have interaction with homeowners, obviously, when you're disconnecting service and turning it back on. So at some point, we need to get those lines done. And of course, how to handle maintenance contractor inside of our facilities, not only our office building, but our treatment plants. And then the big one looming next year is going to be what's happening with revenues. The state, of course, has ordered that there be no water shutoff. And our concern is that folks may get way behind on their monthly payments. We hope that's not the case, but that could definitely impact our revenue moving forward, and of course the projects that we need to maintain our facilities. So in conclusion, this experience has allowed us to find some new efficiencies that we may have never discovered. We're going to consider implementing some of these permanently. And wrap up here by saying that I want to thank APWA for inviting Earnhart to share art. And I found it beneficial to learn what other government agencies, what other people are doing to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. And at this time, Back to our moderator, Brian.
All right, thanks, Lewis. So we are definitely over on our time just a little bit here, but I did want to pull out a couple of questions, and we're not going to be able to get to everybody's question for sure, but we'll definitely look at these questions afterwards and get back to some of you maybe more on an individual basis. But a couple of these questions I thought maybe looked kind of lumped together. Several people asked maybe the same thing. There was some questions on virtual meetings. Dan mentioned Microsoft Teams. That's what my organization uses. Westerville's using Google Suites. So maybe just open this up for our panelists here. What are others using for their virtual meetings there, either internally or maybe I heard some folks doing things with social media for public meetings and whatnot. So I'll just open it up.
Brian, this is Cindy from Grove City, and I'll chime in here. Internally, our IS department deployed WebEx on a limited number of licenses, but all senior staff is able to set those up. We also, for our council meeting, established it as a WebEx so that all the council members and administration and anyone who had something to, on the agenda could be visible via video and audio. But then we streamed the meeting from our normal streaming service with Swagit from our city website. That's always a live stream, so that was still in place, as well as a function within WebEx to do a Facebook live stream. And so the public was able to view the meeting and ask questions and provide comment via Facebook Live.
All right, very good.
This is Jackie with Upper Arlington. We've been using Zoom. So when this all started, our IT department went out and got professional Zoom licenses. And then each department head was given one, and then more as requested. Between that and Microsoft Teams and the Skype business is how I've been communicating with most staff doing internal and external meetings.
Brian, Larry, City of Hilliard, we use Microsoft Teams for all virtual meetings, and our IT director and communications director work very closely to stream our public meetings through Facebook Live using Teams.
And Brian, this is Dan. As I mentioned, we use Microsoft Teams quite a bit, but then you'll get into meetings with other organizations that use Zoom or Skype or one of the other mechanisms as well. But we are handling all of our public meetings with MS Teams, and it's working out really well so far.
Brian, this is Louis McFarland. Earnhart is using Zoom for staff meetings, and we use Zoom for our first board meeting.
All right, very good. So hopefully that answered the question there for several folks. Another one that I saw here was somebody asking about unions and how do you deal with the shift changes with the union. So those that have unions, could you chime in on that one?
Sure, this is Jackie Thiel with Upper Arlington again. We have our public works staff is in the Teamsters Union, and what I have been doing is communicating with the union directly, our operations plans. And at this point, we've been pretty lucky, you know, having 2 days on and then 4 days of the paid administrative leave has definitely not caused any issues for people. As we change to 2 shifts and possibly 10-hour work days, my plan is once we have that draft plan in place to send that to the union for review and make sure that they're on board. But I am very thankful that our staff has really stepped up and, like others said, really been a first responder for us.
Brian, this is Cindy. I'll chime in also. My staff is also union. We're in the AFSCME union. And I'm also probably the one that has impacted my staff's schedules the most with making them alternate between day shift and evening shift. But for us, it has not been a problem. That's because in our contract, it's directly written that management has the discretion on all reporting and shift items. So we implemented that, and you know, we don't want to just cram something down folks' throats. We talked it through with managers, and we our staff has stepped up to the plate, and there has been limited grumbling.
Brian, Larry, City of Hilliard, we have a great relationship with our union. The approach we've taken is we share our plans or any changes to our operations with the 3 union reps before we meet with the larger group. And any plan that we've put out or change that we've made has been well received by our entire department.
All right, very
And
good.
Brian, the city of Worthington is non-union, so I don't have that issue.
Brian,
Right.
Brian, Earnhart is non-union, but I want to echo what Larry had said and the others said. Our employees is what makes this plan work. Without them, it would be hard to try to manage everything that we have to do. So, I mean, really, the success of this is on their shoulders. We're just pointing them in the right direction. So, my hat's off to the folks that work at Earnhart.
Well, thanks, everybody, for the input there. I'm going to take one last question here, and I think this is a good kind of final question from both personally and organizationally. What changes or new methods are people interested in maintaining going forward?
Brian, this is Dan. I'll just say a few words to that. I think, well, as Larry alluded to, and Lewis as well, is you really kind of see people shine and realize they have some expertise that went unrecognized. And honestly, I think we've all gotten a little closer in the execution of this plan because you're forced to do things in a different way. And certainly the use of technology, both virtual meetings, the sharing of files using SharePoint and OneDrive and FTP sites, and our GIS stuff has been phenomenal. It's just it opens your eyes to things you didn't recognize in the past.
Great point, Dan. Larry, City of Hilliard, Brian. I think this process for me has shown me that I need to get out from behind my desk more. We all get caught up in the day-to-day. Our noses are down, or we're buried in the computer screen every day, and we don't have that personal interaction. We don't spend the time building relationships. So some of us are better than others at networking outside of our organization on a regional or state level. But we have great folks within our organization, but sometimes we just fail to not only see their contributions, but to see them. So I mentioned in my slide about the servant leaders or the anchors or the rock stars within your organization. We're not, public works people are not great about telling others that they're rock stars. We need to do that. If you have a rock star in your organization, you have someone that's been very supportive to you, you need to tell them.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Larry. Anybody else there want to chime in on that one?
Okay, Brian, this is, I know one thing that we've learned is some efficiencies, especially on our treatment group side. Simple things like reporting to the office in the morning and then going to the plant, whereas going straight to the plant and starting your daily work, I'm saving probably an hour and a half to 2 hours a day with each operator by direct reporting from their residents. That's huge. The other thing is we are focusing, everybody is focusing on what's really essential, is necessary, And what I'm finding for our organization is we're still moving the ball forward. We're still meeting all of our regulatory requirements, our contractual requirements, and maybe we need to refocus on what are truly our priorities as management. We get caught up in forms, paperwork, and responding to things that maybe shouldn't deserve our attention. So I've generated a ton of notes. When this thing is over, I guess how I want to function when I'm back to the office and life is back to the status quo.
This is Jackie Thiel with Upper Arlington. Something simple that I'm definitely going to take away from this is when we have some of our meetings where we're printing out all sorts of handouts and materials, I found that these virtual meetings, while not always better, in some of these cases when there's a lot of handouts or things that you want to share with people, they're actually a better format than getting together and showing a PowerPoint or going through a bunch of handouts. I've shown that we've been able to focus together on the same document or set of plans and zoom in together. While we're not physically together, I feel like our minds are working better together in that aspect.
Yeah, I would agree, Jackie, with that. And just some of the technology tools that we've all been forced into using that maybe there was some resistance before. I think we're all getting better at it. I think we're getting more efficient at it. And I think that it's going to prove that once we're back, we don't always have to schedule meetings where people are commuting and wasting that time just on the back and forth, that we can host them and be just as productive remotely. Not just in public works, but our organization is looking at possibility of, we've canceled Mayor's Court for this month, and they're looking at maybe not having Mayor's Court in the physical form anymore. Can it be done virtually and not require people to take off an entire day of work if they needed to come into Mayor's Court? Same on our building division. Are there ways that they can do virtual inspections where, they need a homeowner needs them to come into their home to see something? Could they do it virtually and not have to take off an entire day of work? So some of these technologies and these tools that we've maybe had but not utilized as well as we could have are showing up as things that we can do better.
Well, thanks. It was lots of good info there. I do want to thank all of our guests, Jackie, Cindy, Larry, Dan, Lewis. Really appreciate you guys taking the time and sitting in, sharing this knowledge with everyone out there. I think it was extremely valuable. And I guess just kind of my takeaway here is I think there's a challenge maybe for all of us to find the good that can come out of this. I think there's definitely a lot of good things that could come out of this experience that we've had the last several weeks here. So with that, we are going to wrap up and appreciate everybody participating. Have a good day.